I know it's been a minute, and I haven't had the energy that I would like to have had to donate and use for the podcast. I do appreciate the feedback that I've gotten from the fans and listeners about how this show helps, and I'm so glad to hear that. And I wouldn't do it if I didn't get at least some feedback to that extent. And so I've had another listener request or two for a second part to episode 4. If y'all remember back, episode 4 was how to find a good therapist. And a lot of that episode is a lot of guidance and helpful information and tips. And I don't think I delved quite far enough into how to find a good therapist and like what a good therapist looks like. And that, there's a reason I didn't do that. I left it purposefully vague because that has to be the good therapist for you. That has to be the right fit for you and where you're at in your journey. But I have had a request to elaborate on like what that can look like and what it can look like to be in different stages of the journey and how can we just narrow it down in general. But I did get some positive feedback for the how to find a therapist at all was super helpful. So another colleague of mine recommended Therapy Den, which I haven't tried yet, but I'll get into the specifics later. But let's go ahead and get into the episode and into the topic. So before I get too far down this rabbit hole, and I hope you enjoy the rabbit hole journey with me, I want to be very clear with a caveat to this podcast. This is no substitute for mental health help. If you are struggling with your mental health, or you think you might have mental illness, or that you just need some help with mental health, please, please seek professional help. A podcast, intellectualizing, reading all the books, absorbing this information, it's great. And it's a great start, and it's a great way to be working on yourself without getting professional mental health help. And this is still no substitute for professional mental health intervention or help. So please seek professional help. And that's kind of what this episode is dedicated to, is talking about how to find professional help, what a good fit looks like, and how to differentiate between somebody who is maybe a yes person or just agreeing with you versus somebody who's meeting you where you're at in your therapeutic journey. And those two things can look a lot alike. As someone who was spinning her wheels in therapy for years and years and years, I can tell you that it can be hard if you don't know what you don't know. And I know that's really vague, but let me try to narrow that down. It can be difficult to differentiate just spinning your wheels and not having a good therapist or not having the right fit therapist for you and not being ready to do the work. So let's talk about that. What does that look like? I'm going to start with my own personal experience. And I know I've talked to you guys a couple of times about this in a couple of different episodes that I attended therapy for years. Well, it was back in 2010 after I had broken up with my ex and moved out. And I knew that I was either likely to go down a self-destructive path, which I didn't want to do, or I could go down a self-improvement path. Like there were two choices for how to handle a devastating breakup. When you leave someone that you're still in love with, it is absolutely devastating. And for those of y'all that can relate, for those of y'all that have done that, who walked away when you knew something wasn't serving you, you know how paradoxical that is and how horribly difficult that is and how much grief and anguish and pain that causes you. So you can love someone and not want to see them again. You can wish someone well and tell them never to contact you again. Like we can hold these paradoxes both in our minds and in reality by holding boundaries. I didn't know what the fuck boundaries were. I didn't know what any of this was. But I knew that I should probably get some help because I had no idea what I was doing. And I knew that I was struggling. I knew that I was in deep grief. I knew I felt like I would never be whole again. I knew I felt like I would never find love again and all of those things, right? Like I knew I was better off. Like I knew that I was worthy of love and that it was better to be alone than in something unhealthy where we were abusing each other back and forth. And I was his punching bag for issues with his ex-wife. And yeah, it's just a long story, which I'm not going to get into because there's two sides to every story and I don't have the other person's perspective to share with you. So it would be completely biased just to tell mine, which you guys get my biased perspective anyway, plenty. So yeah, take it for what it's worth. So I went into therapy and I found this therapist and I just went with the first one that I found. She was local, 5 minutes from my house. qualified. She was a kind person, I think. I mean, as far as I remember, this is a long time ago. She would listen with empathy and not interrupt me. And I remember vaguely she tried to give me like guiding behavior, like make a vision board and focus on this. And I'm wondering now if she was just meeting me where I was at versus she wasn't a good fit for me, or maybe both. But she wasn't challenging me. She didn't say, take a look in the mirror and be accountable. And what about you attracted this person? And what about you is emotionally unavailable? Because I know I've mentioned this before, but for all my anxious attachers out there, and again, attachment style is on a spectrum. So we all swing. You're never totally anxious. You're never totally fearful avoidant. You're never totally avoidant. And you're never totally secure. It just doesn't work that way. Like, as much as we would like to think. Even earn secure. Like, we all have our moments. And listen to Sabrina's episode on earn secure and what that looks like. Sabrina Zohar's podcast for more information on just what that looks like when you're triggered, going from anxious or avoidant or fearful avoidant to secure. Like, it doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means you handle your triggers differently and you regulate and things like that. But anyway, you come back to yourself. So I had met this therapist and I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I spent years, not a couple months, not a couple visits, years going to see her and thinking that I was doing something good for myself. And it was better than being self-destructive. And so maybe that was what I needed, because I'm also a firm believer in the universe puts you on your path. And as long as you follow the signs from the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, then you're right where you need to be. Like, you are where you need to be. Just follow your path. Wherever you're at, that's okay to be. That's okay to be where you're at. So again, let me circle back. For all the anxious attacher listeners, predominantly anxious attachment style and or in recovery from anxious attachment, like working on earned secure, it's really easy to look at your avoidant partner or your past partners or whomever and say, you're the problem. You're avoidant. You don't give me the love I need. You're not here for me. You're not supporting my anxiety. You're not comforting me or calming me or co-regulating with me or doing, all the things that you have maybe gleaned from podcasts, from reels, from books, from the book Attached, which kind of skews the avoidant attachment, kind of makes them look like the bad guy. But let's remember the science behind this and the data behind this. Again, attachment is a theory, so let's remember that. But anxious attachers, avoidant attachers, fearful avoidance, aka disorganized, these are all insecure attachment styles, which means if you've listened to past episodes and if you've done some work, some reading, some research, any gleaning of information on this topic, you will know what I'm about to say. It means they're all emotionally unavailable. Yes, nobody's going to like fucking hearing this. If you are resonating with anxious attachment and you know that you're anxious and you get it, you know that you are emotionally unavailable. Honey, I've been there. I get it. And now it's interesting because now I can see it. Now I can see it in other people. Like, I dated somebody recently who was severely anxiously attached, and they couldn't see that they just wanted whoever was filling that seat. They thought, oh, this person checks my boxes with intelligence and looks or blah, 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 whatever boxes this person was checking with me. They just didn't realize they weren't getting to know me. And I even said, like, first, second date, I'm like, you're not asking questions of depth. You're not asking insightful questions. You're not trying to get to know me. Like, these are massive red flags. And it still didn't change. Didn't change from there. And then behavior worsened and then there was disrespect of boundaries and yeah, so I exited out real quick. But essentially, like, the biggest deal breakers are emotionally unavailable. As much as I would like to say, oh, I'm just looking for somebody super intelligent and like that's hard to find, and that is hard to find. But the biggest deal breaker for me now is emotionally unavailable. And I think the second biggest deal breaker is like level of intelligence. Like, can you keep up? Like, I don't mean to sound arrogant because I'm not a genius by any measure of the imagination, as it were. And I like someone I can have an intellectual conversation with, somebody who can talk about deeper shit, more meaningful, and like emotional intelligence and emotional availability. That is a different thing. Although I find it goes hand in hand more often with those that are more intelligent overall. And intelligence, again, is a spectrum. And it's also subjective, right? What's intelligent to one person is not intelligent to the next. And also we can learn something from absolutely everybody we meet. I don't care how intelligent or unintelligent or their IQ level you think that they have, you can learn something from them. They're another human being. They have a story. Everybody has pain. Everybody has trauma. Everybody has a past. You can learn something from them, period. That's just a little side caveat, little ADHD squirrel topic as we take those down the road here occasionally. So we got a little off topic. Let's circle back. Although attachment styles and being emotionally available is relevant to finding a therapist, because you have to know where you're at in your healing path, your journey, whatever you want to call it. Your adventure? Yeah, that sounds better, right? Yeah, that sounds less stigmatized. Let's go with your adventure. I like it. All right, so you have to know where you're at in your adventure. I guess that kind of mislabels it then. So perhaps let's go with healing path. I think it sounds less cliched than journey. To know what kind of therapist is going to be the right fit for you. And I say that because if you know you're severely anxiously attached, or if you know you're anxiously attached, or if you know you're avoidant, if you know you're not ready for commitment, if you know you're not ready for intimacy, if you know you're not ready for vulnerability, maybe let's start with the basics in therapy. Like if you're finding a therapist, if you're doing the research, if you're looking for a good fit, maybe start with someone who can meet you where you're at. And where you're at is not ready for the deeper level work. I'm not ready for inner child healing. I'm not ready for DBT, CBT. I am not ready to explore my childhood core wounds. I am not ready to hear about the child-parent dynamic that's playing out again and again and again in my romantic relationships, which is all what happens, by the way, in case you were curious. But there are deeper levels of therapy. There are more progressive levels in therapy. And my favorite therapist, the therapist I've had for years and years and years, even though I've seen a bunch and some have been more effective than others, used a really great analogy with me one time, and I'm going to share it with you all so you can keep this in mind if you're either just starting therapy or you're looking for the right fit therapist, or you're even a year in and you feel like you're not making progress, or you're 6 months in, or whatever. Therapy is like, I love the analogy she used of a child. Like when you start therapy, it's like you're just being born. You haven't learned to talk. You can barely see 12 inches in front of your face. You can cry and poop and eat and shit and scream. And that's really it. Like you can start to move your arms a little bit, but you're not even crawling. You're not even crawling. And the timeline kind of lines up. Because if you have a good fit therapist and you're ready, and I mean emotionally and physically ready and spiritually ready to do the work in therapy, you want to be better, you have a growth mindset, then the timeline, again, in general, looks about the same as it does for a human child. Like you start to make some basic progress in the first 6 months. Okay, you've learned to crawl in the first 6 months or so. And then you start to eat solid food. And now you're at like 8, 10 months or whatever. I know the timeline is different for every human baby. And the timeline's different for everybody in therapy as well. But this is when the progress starts, and it's very slow, very painstaking, and just incremental at first. And you're like, but I went to therapy because I want to fucking run. I'm in therapy because I want to be awesome, and I want to run, and I want to be happy, and I want to fix my shit overnight, and da, 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 da. Yeah, good luck with that. Therapy is a long process. Getting better, being growth-minded, learning how to be a better version of you, taking care of yourself, learning how to love yourself, leaning into happiness and joy. This is shit that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen over 6 months. Honey, it barely happens over 6 years. And that's with somebody ready and willing to do the work. Someone who is putting the emotional work inside and outside of therapy, which I can't stress enough. The work outside of therapy is just as important as the work inside of therapy. And so that's why, I know you guys have heard me talk about inner child healing and DBT and CBT and core wounds and IFS and role play, and that shit is higher level. These are higher level therapeutic concepts that you may not be ready for. And you're like, Mizzy, I'm ready. I've been doing it. I'm in there. I know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm here for it. I'm learning. I'm better. Okay, great. Maybe you're 6 years in. Maybe you're 5 years in. Maybe you're 10 years in. Maybe you're 2 years in and you just started from a more secure place. Like, that's fantastic. I applaud you. Hats off to you. I fucking love it. I'm here for it. I'm here for you. Proud of you. And it's not the same for everybody. So I like that analogy, circling back to that. I like the analogy of the human child. Like, you're barely learning to crawl, baby. If you have been in therapy for 6 months and you're like, why am I better? Why don't I don't want to do stuff and I'm still depressed and I'm still grieving and I'm still unhappy and I'm still addicted to this and this and this and this. Well, no shit. Like, did you learn to be a fully functional human being, adult, at 6 months old? No, you didn't. Oh, God. Well, did you know how to walk and talk at 6 months old? No? Well, walking and talking. Look at you, though. You're walking and talking now, aren't you? You stuck with it, and look what happened. Same for therapy. You gotta stick with it. You don't have to stick with the same therapist if you don't feel like it's a good fit, if you don't feel like they're meeting you where you're at, if you feel like they're giving you too much, or they're challenging you too much, or it's not enough, or they're just a yes person, then keep looking. Shop around. Shop until you find the right fit for you. Because the world's best therapist may not be the world's best therapist for you. So keep shopping. All right, so I promised y'all, and let's get into a little bit of the more meat and potatoes. Not that we haven't already, but this is I think, more substantive and more valuable tip when you're looking for and you're interviewing and or researching the right fit therapist for you. They shouldn't be mean. They shouldn't be harsh. You shouldn't feel like you're being attacked. And they should be capable of calling you out. That may be with kindness, that may be with gentleness, and that may be subtly if you're not ready. Like we talked about, being ready and being emotionally available and ready to do the work. And let's say you're ready to go to therapy, but you're not so ready as if you want to get called out for all your bullshit and all your behavior, and you want not ready for full accountability, right? They should be able to call you out sometimes when it's appropriate and when it's the right stage and time for you. And a good fit therapist should be able to see that and recognize when it's appropriate to call you out and when it isn't. And I know you guys are going to ask, and I've gotten questions from listeners, can you give us an example? Yes, absolutely. So a few years back, when I was still pre-anxiously attached in therapy, let's say 2021, 2022 or so, not as severely as I was, but I was still pretty damn anxiously attached. My therapist noted a behavioral pattern of mine, which was like I would date a guy short term or whatever, and the minute I sniffed or perceived the slightest hint of disinterest, I would cut him off, write him off, block him, shut him down, delete him on the app or in text or block their number, whatever. I would cut and run so fucking fast. I'd be out of there before you could say Roadrunner, which, if you're a child of the 80s, that's an apt metaphor. But she pointed this out to me, and she did so gently and when I was ready to hear it. Because I think her pointing that out 3 years prior, in one ear and out the other, and I would have just been frustrated, not ready to hear it. Like I was just processing anger. I was learning how to feel my feelings. I needed some basic emotion regulation help from a therapist. I did not need to be challenged because I wasn't ready for that. So try to know yourself, look introspectively where you're at, be accountable, be ready to look in the mirror. And that's when you're ready to do the work in therapy, when you're ready to be accountable and look in the mirror. And until then, if you're in therapy or want to seek a therapist, just work on emotion regulation. Just work on learning how to feel your feelings. Just work on leaning into different perspectives and improving your mental health to the point where life isn't so painful, difficult day to day, right? Like the bar is going to be different depending on where you're starting. And the bar is going to be different depending on if you've already started, how much work have you already put in. So to that effect, my therapist wasn't harsh. She was just challenging. Like, hey, do you know that you do this? Missy, do you know? Are you aware of this? Like, very gentle. And do you notice this? And then she would say, I notice this and this and this. And, she would do it in such a manner that I didn't feel like I was being called out, even though I was. But she did it very carefully and when I was ready for it. And that's the kind of therapist you want to find as well. Somebody who meets you where you're at, who does call you out on your shit, but does so gently and depending on where you're at in your journey. Like, are you ready to be called out on your shit? Are you ready to be told, oh yeah, I'm anxiously attached? Oh, that's too much? Okay. Oh, no, I'm ready to hear that. Okay, great. Are you also ready to be told you're fully emotionally unavailable? You have no capacity to get to know someone else because you're so severely anxiously attached. Like, there was a time that I was not ready to hear that. And then I got to a point where I'm like, oh shit, that really is me. And now I've gotten past that point and worked through a lot of it. And for the most part, earn secure. And I think earn secure, like I am earn secure because I handle my triggers better and I respond better. It doesn't mean that my default isn't still anxious. It doesn't mean that I don't still have my moments. It doesn't mean that I don't lose my shit. It doesn't mean that I don't spin in shame spirals and have shitty narratives that feed my childhood core abandonment wounds. That doesn't mean any of that. It just means that I handle it better and I regulate it myself first. Now, although you should have seen me over the summer. I was struggling. I was having a moment. By a moment, I mean like a couple months. Actually, it was more like 6 weeks of like hardcore anxiety where I was like, co-regulate. And it made me feel better. And because I was dating this guy who turned out to be, not emotionally available, but, thought he was and he said he was. And I'm like, ah. And I think one of the most revelational pieces of data, if you will allow me this squirrel moment, is for me, the wanting part of the brain and the doing part of the brain for all human brains are two different parts. That was so helpful for me to learn and intellectually understand that, yeah, he wanted to be this. And he said he was this because he wanted to be that. And because he saw himself that way. And because that's who he was maybe before we had met. And then the shit happened in his life and he went backwards in progress and, whatever. Maybe he truly was emotionally available. He seemed like it the first few weeks we met. And that was the guy I was down for and let's do this. And then that guy left and another guy showed up. And this part or this guy that I was dealing with was not emotionally available, did not have the capacity, couldn't handle a relationship, wasn't ready for one. And I was like, whoa, 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 where'd that other guy go? I signed up for him, but I know I swear he's me. I swear he's me. As you know what I kept hearing. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I believe you. Like, why wouldn't I believe you? I don't fucking know you from Adam, so I'll stick around for it. And nope. I'm like, okay, it's been 3.5 months, almost 4 months. Yeah, I'm out. Like, it's not that I don't believe you anymore. I can't hang around this long anymore. Maybe you truly were this emotionally available dude and now you're not. And that's okay. So, but the whole point to that story was I was triggered and I was dealing with my triggers and I kind of handled them poorly and lost my shit and had anxious texting spirals and 7-minute long audio messages. And I looked back and I was like, holy shit. And I think the universe sent me the next person to date a few months after that who was me. Like, who was the anxiously attached version of me, sending 7-minute audio messages and overthinking these texts and, like, responding to them saying, what do you mean you don't like me anymore? And blah, blah, and disregarding my boundaries and disrespecting the things I said repeatedly. Like, I repeatedly asked for X, Y, and Z, and then this person disregarded those things. And I was like, and you wonder, I don't want to date anymore. Like, you have disrespected and disregarded specifically and very clearly what I told you was not okay. It's just... I think the universe was sending me a message. They were like, oh, this is what you did. This is what you did. This is who you were when you were triggered. Like, get your shit together. So it was a maybe not so nice reminder, but a really helpful experience. Like, oh, I'm still working on my anxious triggers. Like, and I haven't been triggered in a relationship for years and years and years. And then when I was seeing this guy and we were in this, progressive relationship that we were getting to relationship status of, I was like, oh. And he wanted to see me exclusively and vice versa. And I was like, oh, there's some shit to work on. Like, I haven't been triggered and I haven't had the opportunity to heal in a relationship in years. And that's why I ascribe to what Sabrina puts on her dating profile, that she's partnered now. Sabrina Zohar's podcast, she mentions, I want to do the work of healing with a partner because I know that's where I'm at. Like, I know that I'm going to get triggered and I know that a healthy relationship and a healthy partner is going to trigger the fuck out of me because it's just part of being a human being. Right? And so I have that on my dating profile as well. Like, I want to do the work of healing with a partner. And it scares a lot of guys off, and that's absolutely fine with me. That's what I'm here for. But we'll talk about that in another episode. I'll do a dating episode because I've had a few requests for that as well, like dating profile and what does that look like? And, what's dating with anxious attachment versus dating with avoidant attachment versus dating earned secure versus dating secure. Had a lot of questions like, hey, I'm still in the dating pool or I'm back in the dating pool. Can we do an episode on this? So yes. I will get to it as my energy levels allow. I will get to it when I get to it. And that's another thing. Like, remind yourself it's okay to be where you're at. I know I've said it, and I've said it before, and I've said it before in this fucking episode, and I'll say it again. It is okay to be where you're at. You don't have the energy for this. You don't have the emotional availability for this. You don't have the capacity for X, Y, and Z. That's okay. Know your limits. Don't make false promises. Don't tell people, I'm available for this when you're not. just try, because we're all doing our best. So let's wrap it up there. I don't want to make this episode too long. I've had requests to shorten the episodes to less than 30 minutes. So join me next time for a continuation of dating with insecure attachment styles and how to narrow down to find a good therapist. And I'm sorry, I kind of went off on the tangent about dating, but it relates to the therapy episode and how to find a good therapist. So let's talk more in the next episode about what doing your best looks like, what that story meant, and how more specifically to find the right fit therapist for you and with where you're at in your therapeutic journey or healing path. And we'll see you next time.